Is it rolling, Bob?
It's rolling now. All right, how's it going, everyone? You're watching the Green Dream Project. Jim here. And today we are incredibly lucky we get to be here with Marcia Gibbons, local building expert on Earthbag building. Welcome.
Thanks for doing this. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
But except for use of the term expert, I wouldn't say that. I would not use that. Building freak, yes, but I don't know about the expertise. But you know, with anything else, the more you do, the better you get at it.
Absolutely.
But there's always unexpected things and
Even
snafus
no
and like aw shits.
Probably even no matter how
exactly
much experience you
The
have.
first mistake I made building this dome, I was mortified and calling some experts, you know, real experts, and one of them told me a hilarious story about a licensed building contractor who had been building for decades and built a house, and when they finally did the final hookups, the sewer was below grade. And I thought, I'm never going to feel bad again. Mistakes happen.
Talk about your training and how you've come to be able to build with Earthbag.
I fell in love with earth building in general in the early 70s. Did some hitchhiking around, and being from Chicago, when I came across earth building in Santa Fe, I was mind-boggled. I mean, two huge epiphanies. One, you can build out of mud, and two, you can build your own house. And those two things have stayed with me. And I had several false starts, bought land, lost it in a divorce, physical health things that I thought would prevent me from doing this, and you know, children to raise and had to make money and all that. And in the meantime, I mean, as an undergraduate, I studied a lot about architecture. As an artist, you know how to use tools, so I became a house painter and then did a little roofing and then did a little of this, a little of that. So I had some experience by the time I got to this point in my life 11 years ago. Some building experience. Plus I've been a farmer and I know how to move earth around and soil, and I know as an artist I've used clay, so all those things entered into it. And I could draw plans and make models, and I became familiar with Cal Earth and the work of Nader Khalili back in the early 90s, right after he started Cal Earth, and I lived only about an hour or so from there. So I immediately started going to their open houses and photographing and figuring out how did they do that and how did they do that. But I went repeatedly and have some nice pictures of the evolution of some of their buildings. When I finally came here to Bisbee and bought this land, I went and I apprenticed there with Nader in his last group in the fall of '07. So then by the time I was actually working on Earthbag building there, I felt like I'd already been doing it. Nevertheless, when you start and you actually start from the ground up to do your project, there's always going to be surprises and the reality of the total experience. But that was a pretty good background to start with. All of those things have played a part.
You've actually lived in this dome.
I did for 2 years. I owned a house in town, which is 20 minutes from here, door to door. And my husband there was no way he was ever going to live, as he used to put it, in a, what did he call it? A mud dauber nest. Anyway, he was very proud of what I was doing, but so he stayed at the house in town and I lived out here, with the exception of, you know, back and forth. I visit him, the cats, do some laundry. That was about the extent of it. So, yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I had no refrigerator. I learned to live without a refrigerator, which wasn't all that hard. Back in the mid-'70s, I had been a date farmer in the Coachella Valley in Southern California, and we lived outside for 3 years, but I mean, it's just bloody hot there, and it almost never rains. So I had a few skills from, you know, living that rough. So this was kind of like luxury version. It was less luxurious when I was living in it than it is now. You know, it's evolved quite a bit. Because that was 2011, I think, right around there. 2011, 2012.
Of course, it's cold now, but Arizona is known for its heat. How do you feel this dome held up in some of those extreme conditions?
I think it holds up really well. Like today, this small 2-burner wood-burning stove, even though it's old, a newer, more efficient stove would be more efficient. But this is all that this little space really needs in the cold weather. During the time I lived here, we had the infamous deep freeze where it was down in single digits and all the plumbing was exploding all over Bisbee. And people would say, "Are you okay out there?" And I'm like, "I'm fine. I got a big pile of firewood and a pile of books, you know, if you get into trouble." And at the time, I only had one riser outside, so there was no plumbing. It was like, I'm good. In the summertime, it gets a little warmer in here than I think a lot of people would like, but not that bad. And I have solar, so a little fan back here in the window of the apps, that's pretty much all I've ever needed. If I were to do it again, I'd probably put in a ceiling fan, because having lived in hot, really, truly hot place for a very long time, ceiling fans are a miracle. So I think when I build this next one, it'll have a ceiling fan. But I don't think you can beat straw bale for heat and cool, for insulative value. That for sure. Because each of the building techniques and styles and things that I've done, they all have advantages and disadvantages. So I would say the ultimate for temperature control is straw bale. It has other disadvantages, but that's an advantage.
With the Earthbag, even with the thermal mass that you've been getting, during those extreme temperatures, it can get a little stuffy in the summer. It does get a bit cold in the winter.
Yeah, a little bit more than probably the average suburban American type person would want it to be, because people have gotten so used to having such tight control over their temperatures.
Right.
But most of the time I'm outside anyway. I'm one of those people. You know, pretty much, your house is just a place to hang out by your garden, you know. But in any case, like adobe, any thick-walled building system, if you keep the heat source going, everything warms up, and it just needs to just keep, you know, like this. If you shut it down and have no heat source, the walls go completely cold, furniture, everything, and then it takes a little more to heat it up. And then once it's cooler in here in the hot weather until it's been really hot for a sustained period. And then it's just the reverse. Everything, including the walls, are heated up. But in this country, you know, things really do cool down at night. And there's great ventilation. You know, we have ventilation this way and that way. And vents in the top of each of these, the dome and the apse.
So that's probably definitely something people want to consider, especially living in different climates.
Yes.
Like, because here in the desert, it does cool off at night, which might give the adobe a chance to rest and cool off, versus if it's hot all the time.
Right, and I find that circulation is probably your best friend with hot weather, is that ceiling fan or in cross ventilation. You have a breeze going.
And how thick are the walls in this dome?
This dome, the walls are about 14 to 15 inches thick. And that's because it's a 12-foot interior diameter. So these are engineered. This is part of what Nader Khalili devoted, you know, the last part of his life to, was the engineering, and it's approved in San Bernardino County. And it's so the bigger the diameter of the dome, the thicker the walls, and therefore the wider the bags you use when you're building.
That's a really good tip.
Yes, and it's really important to pay attention to that engineering. I've seen some people who just kind of got a cursory look at how it's done, but didn't really do any reading and didn't draw any plans, nothing, kind of thought, oh, I get this. But it's a little more I mean, it's simple, but
there's
you
certain,
have to follow the principles of physics. Yeah, and if you can do that, this is easy to build. And it's not hard, but you better do those things.
some things to consider are bag width, depending on the diameter of the
Definitely.
dome.
Yes. And when we say bag, of course, we're in a round dome these days. We're talking tubes. We're talking a continuous bag at every level, even though we say bags. So yes, you have to make sure you know what the proper size wall is for the diameter of the dome that you're building. And you use 2 compasses. One is in the center, and it keeps the circumference at every course going up, keeps it even all the way around. The way you get that nice catenary curve, which is what this is with your other compass, which is at the edge of the dome, and at every level you change the interior compass so that it follows that. That compass never changes, and it's what creates the dynamic and super solid structure that we have here.
You can build other shapes with Earthbag.
Yes.
You can build. You don't have to build a dome. You could probably build a cylinder. You could even probably build a square. Of
Yes.
course, building square, you gotta think about buttressing.
Exactly. Thank you, because I was talking to somebody about that the other day who was going to do vertical walls, straight lines, and I had to push gently, about check your buttressing, what the regs are on that, because there's a reason for it. In the corners of the building of a square, or you can't have a continuous straight vertical wall without, even in building with a concrete block, that's an issue.
Mm-hmm. The dome's probably one of the most structurally sound of the different types of shapes that you can build, right?
I don't think you can beat it for that. This is earthquake resistant, wind resistant, fire resistant. The wind, serious storms. We had a microburst out here last summer and it took down my wooden ramada, but of course it doesn't even dent nothing here, And Earthbag domes properly built have been surviving big earthquakes in Kathmandu. Some have been built in Haiti as well. So when you have hurricanes and tornadoes and you have a round structure instead of a flat surface and a roof with an overhang where the wind can just come up like that. I was going to get kind of fancy with this next building project and do maybe a cylinder and some other kind of roof, but after that microburst I thought, no, I'm just sticking with the plan. I mean, you look at domes in the world that have survived for centuries, like Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. Did they still call it that? I can't remember. They keep changing the name. Istanbul, I forget. Anyway, Hagia Sophia, that doesn't change. And, St. Peter's and Rome and things. I mean, the dome, wow, it's amazing.
So, and that's probably what I was going to ask you about, maybe the benefits and drawbacks of Earthbag building. So definitely, a dome shape is definitely one of the positives.
Yes, especially in terms of high winds. We're not prone to tornadoes and things here, but we do get those microbursts and whatnot. And so yes, wind goes around it and up and over around it, and it's rather than a flat wall which resists the wind. So wind resistance, I lived in the earthquake country for 31 years, so I think about that even though we're not technically in an earthquake zone. But why would I not engineer it for that? That would be, some people might think, well, we're not in an earthquake zone, so I don't have to do this, this, or this. It's like, really? Come on, And then fire resistant, so there's a lot of pluses. Another plus to the Earthbag dome is that as long as you follow your geometry and certain, specifications, it's one simple technique from below ground all the way to the top. stick-built houses and even straw bale. You have foundation, framing, roofing, then the straw bale, then the finishes. So you've got 5 or 6 different building techniques, skills, and tools that are all needed. And this uses no wood, which is nice. One simple technique, so anyone can do it. You don't have to be a tradesman or hire tradespeople. And the most expensive part of that type of a building is the roof and the foundation. So this is my own subsoil, and we have the tubing or bags and barbed wire. And the barbed wire is between, and there's specifications for that. What type of barbed wire, and a single strand or a double strand. And as long as you follow those simple things, that's for shear, by the way. It's like Velcro.
So definitely, if you're living around the southeast Arizona area, around Bisbee, Douglas, definitely if you were interested in learning how to build with Earthbag, check out this workshop.
True that, yes. It'll be 2 weeks, and great lunches involved, and you'll learn a lot.
There.
Yes, Kenny Quinn and I are going to be teaching again, just like we did on the small dome that we built in March of this year. And we had a good time. I felt like we worked really well together, and his experience and my experience melded really nicely. And so yeah, it's a great opportunity.
And that's one thing. I mean, you can read books and everything like that. You can read all the books, but getting your hands in there,
that's
and
right.
especially learning from seasoned people that have built before is just an indispensable experience. All right, everyone. So that was part 1 of our natural building series with Marcia Gibbons concerning Earthbag. Stay tuned tomorrow. We'll release part 2, and we'll have all the rest of that information. All right. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Definitely subscribe so you can make sure you catch all the parts of this series. Should be very informative. You don't want to miss it. And definitely share it with a friend or two, because they like natural building too. All right, thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow.